So, sorry about the wait, guys. I know it's been quite a few days since I posted, but with the move and the internet and all this ridiculous stuff, it's been quite a task at trying to get this video out. But I mean, really. So, because of that, let's go ahead and jump right into it. This has been a topic that has been requested by a single person on about 75% of my videos, and I have finally gotten to it, and they say I never listen. Today, we will be diving into an old game, but one filled with creatures to observe and study. This particular creature is going to be the Elcor from Mass Effect. So without a ridiculously long intro, let's get to it. The Elcor are a species that is going to be an absolute powerhouse of strength, but strangely are going to be one of the more calmer species that can be found on the Citadel. Their overall size and stature are going to dwarf humans, Turians, Quarians, or really any other species that exists in the surrounding station. To understand why their evolutionary path has taken them down this route, we will have to go back to their home planet where they evolved. Their home world of Dakuna, which I'm like 80% sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, is going to be extremely hostile to humans. If you thought 2 times the amount of Earth's gravity was rough on other planets, this particular planet is going to have 4 times that amount. Humanity would not be able to step foot on the world without really immediate blacking out due to blood loss to the brain. Take an average human male's weight of 195 pounds or 88.5 kilograms and quadruple it, giving you 780 pounds or 353.8 kilograms. Your bones may not snap from the weight, but one false move or trip could really lead to your short but lethal fall. Still, humans wouldn't be able to exist in such an environment for more than probably a few moments, at least consciously, or without the aid of a suit with built-in counter abilities to kind of negate the effects of the gravity. But the Elcor thrive on this world, which has yielded some pretty fairly interesting adaptations. The Elcor are going to be a quadrupedal species and appear like a forward-leaning gorilla in some cases. These 4 points of contact are a must for a few reasons. Walking on 2 legs in a human's case is great, as during our evolutionary path it helped us look over tall grass and spot predators. We also live on a lower gravity planet, which means that the bones didn't need to be as thick, and 2 legs was more than enough to support us. For the Elcor, standing on 2 legs would put thousands of pounds of pressure on the bones, making it quite impossible to exist permanently as a bipedal organism. The legs are going to be structured in a digitigrade arrangement, taking most of the weight off of the knees of the creature. In humans, our knees naturally break down as time goes on and we get older through use. If somehow you were able to not completely die on this planet, your knees would probably wear out the cartilage within 20 years and your synovial fluid would basically turn to concrete. So the Elcor physiology has adapted to this issue by structuring the leg in a way that it pulls the pressure off of the joints and places them on other portions of the bones and really on the ligaments as well. Moving further up the creature, we can see that the legs are not even going to be the largest portion of this species. The arms are going to be quite massive and defined. They exist supporting the central mass of the Elcor, so it's easy to see that the legs really serve a more supporting role than a walking one. The arms themselves are going to largely take care of the bulk of locomotion. Moving down the arms, we can see that they do in fact have hands with fingers. That is interesting as the weight of the creature is placed on these hands, so what I find most odd about it is going to be their dexterity. Usually when hands are used in a more walking role, they become hardened over time and less mobile, taking on the characteristics of a foot. These hands, however, are quite functional. So functional, in fact, that the Elcor have achieved spaceflight when the Asari found them. This would require the use of tools as well as highly developed fine motor neural network of the hands themselves. It appears that they are actually going to have 2 fingers and then 1 opposable thumb on the other side. The 2 fingers will curl back into the fist and the thumb will rest in between those 2 fingers. Moving back up the shoulders, we can see a lot of muscle exists in this area, and this is going to be expected again as this is the main connection point for the arms and a lot of weight is going to be held up here. The creature's back is going to exist in an arch shape, which might be more common on high gravity worlds than you might think. The arch shape is what's going to transfer pressure and force to the next piece and so on and so forth. This is going to be an extremely strong shape, which is actually why the Romans favored this type of structure in their aqueducts. The body ends in a head that is going to be almost reminiscent of a shark face in some ways, but is very much so rooted in its own necessities. The face does not contain a mouth like a human's, but instead contains vertical flaps, which the mouth is going to sit behind. The flaps are movable quite like our own lips, which has been shown before by the fact that they can actually hold cigars. Though judging by their brain chemistry, theory, it could be completely different than ours, so they might not even get a dopamine hit from the nicotine. Who cares? There are going to be two beady eyes that appear to face forward on the creature, suggesting that there is a possibility on their own planet they may have been predators, as this trait is going to be typically rooted in hunting, whereas herbivores usually have their eyes facing on the sides to keep a watchful eye for other predators that might want to eat them. However, it is entirely possible that since they have a different evolutionary track, considering that they did not evolve on Earth, they could really deviate outside of standard Earth rules concerning morphology. On the top of their head exists a set of nostrils on the sides that is highly important to the Elcor. They can detect the scents of other species as well as their own and interpret their meaning. This would suggest that a massive olfactory portion of the brain is going to be highly developed. Covering the Elcor is a very thick hide. This skin is thick for quite a few reasons. The Elcor are not quick to fight, but it seems to me that a thick hide would be invaluable on a planet with such high gravity. Any fall could potentially heavily damage human skin, leading to tears and cracks, and contending with such high gravity, this may actually make healing difficult as the skin might not fuse correctly. The Elcor's answer is the skin just doesn't tear. The outer portion may tear, but the inner portions remain intact. The skin is also going to protect them from the planet's sun. Ancient Elcor more than likely didn't wear clothing and would constantly have their backs exposed to UV radiation and heat. A thicker hide would negate the UV rays and also provide protection from the heat. Nowadays, though, we can see that the Elcor actually do wear some form of clothing on their back, more than likely to protect them from this exact problem. The neck of the creature is going to be short and stocky. It is difficult to really discern where the head ends and the neck begins, but that is probably the point. On our bodies, our skull sits on top of the vertebrae, so our necks are somewhat elongated. On the Elcor, however, the vertebrae are holding up the head, much like you would see on the quadrupedal animals here on Earth. This means that it needs to be shorter and much stronger to hold up the weight of the head. Usually this design is a limiting factor concerning intelligence, so think of like the dinosaurs, but this species has evolved sentience and understanding of the world around them. Internally, this creature has got to be an absolute beast. The skeleton of the Elcor would have to be much thicker than ours. The arm bones would probably be more than half the mass and circumference of the arm. I would put a figure up, but as far as I know, there are not really many Elcor skeletons around. The muscle of the creature must also have to be rather pronounced as well. Overall, they weigh several hundred pounds, meaning that is more weight put on the bones and more muscle for the muscle to actually move. It's sort of like sending a rocket to space. If you want the rocket to get to space, you need more fuel, but you need more fuel to actually get the fuel to space. So it's sort of like if you have more muscle on a high gravity planet, you need more muscle to carry that muscle. It's really kind of interesting that this creature even exists. Something that is also pretty interesting that is noted in the Elcor is that their planet has not just had an effect on their physiology, but also on their mentality as well. The Elcor are going to be very meticulous and careful in their planning. Seeing as they're from a high gravity world, a wrong step or a lack of observation can send them to their deaths. So everything they do is calculated and planned out to the extreme. The governing body of the Elcor is very stable due to this mentality and has helped them avoid fighting and war throughout their entire existence, which has been beneficial but also detrimental during the Reaper Wars. The Elcor do not have a very large standing army, as such they were wiped out quickly concerning their navy. However, this mentality to maintain small groups and spread out over the planet meant that their pacification by the Reapers took much longer than the other species who clung to city centers. Just a little bit of side lore for you there. One of the more interesting aspects about their mentality that has been noted is that there is a, well, they call it a mental illness. There is a propensity for some Elcor to actually enjoy fighting. In fact, some Elcor can be seen as bouncers guarding specific areas. So, have you ever really wanted to know how Elcor do fight? Well, you won't see them picking up weapons they find or firing them with their hands. Your standard Elcor is going to use its size and thick hide to its benefit. They will mount shoulder weapons onto themselves, which can be absolutely devastating to an enemy. A quote from the game refers to them as living tanks and apparently some not so great names, but just consider them tanks nonetheless. Apparently, however, the Elcor had to build virtual intelligence to handle fights and strategizing, as an Elcor making a split-second decision is not something that they are known for. So in summation, I consider these guys basically walking whales. They're able to communicate by low frequencies, scent, and subtle movements. If you have ever talked to an Elcor, this is why they're going to preface everything they say with their current emotion, as most creatures are not going to understand the context. When dealing with humans or other creatures who are not so methodical with their emotions, something as simply smiling, waving, hugging would seem exceedingly overkill for the Elcor and quite alien. But considering we are aliens to them, that kind of makes sense. So there you have it. have it, a morphological breakdown of the Elcor, as well as a little bit of an explanation of how this transfers over into their everyday life and interactions. If you guys enjoyed the video, then please give it a sub if you are new. I'm hoping to maybe reach 100K by the end of this year, which would be amazing. And if you liked it enough to leave a like, that's going to help the video get out there and helps the channel grow. I've got a Twitter and Discord link that I will drop in the description. I've also got a Patreon link, which is the best way to support the channel due to YouTube's random demonetization streak they're currently on. So if you're interested in that, well, it will be in the description. I'd like to shout out my patrons real quick. At the scientist tier, we have Layla Lizarin, and then we have Bowen Goodwin. Our residents are going to be Richard Muhlenberg and G. Anderson. Holding their PhD in genetics, we have A. Laurantis, Andrew Lawson, Divine Whisper, Evan Osborne, John Russo, Laffy No Skill, and Steve N. Our masters in biology are going to be Adam Hartswick, Brian H. Briggs, Cameron Smith, Javier D. Rodriguez, Scott Grant, and the Otterman. And last but not least, our bachelors in morphological sciences are going to be Ahigao Comics, Alex the Gun Guy, Average Soul, Dustin Ellis, Eric Scott Gillies, Jims, Joseph Radical, and Professor Bennips. Thank you guys for your support. So currently I have finished moving my apartment, so I should be getting these videos out on a little better interval. Also expect the Resistant games to be coming soon, as I just got my PS3 about an hour ago, just waiting on the games to get shipped to me. So alright, I hope you guys enjoy the video, and I will see y'all in the next one.